Okay, this is Algebra 2, Lesson 24. Do you remember earlier we did a problem with this point 0.03x plus 0.02 equals 0.2. Okay, basically it's solving for the equation, solving for the variable x. Now, we have some properties, the multiplicative property of equality, that says if we multiply or divide every term in the entire equation by the same number, we're not changing it. So remember, this left side, you have to remember what a term is. Term is separated by a plus or minus. Okay, this is one term. This is one term. So I have two terms on the left side of the equation. I've got one term on the right side. So if I multiply this all by the same number, each term, I'm not changing, I'm just renaming it, kind of like when you get a common denominator. Now, on this particular one, we have decimals. Do we have rules for adding, subtracting, and multiplying decimals? Yes, we do. Do we like to use decimals? No, I would rather use whole numbers. So when that happens, let's look at our decimals. 0.3, there's two decimal places there, right? 2 here, 1 here. So which one has the most decimal places? These two. They both have 2, which is the hundredths column. So if we multiply this whole equation by 100, we're going to get whole numbers. So what's 100 times 0.03? There's two zeros in 100. You simply move the decimal place over two places. So it's 3x plus 2 equals 20. Now, isn't that easier to solve than trying to deal with decimals? I mean, I can do decimals. You should know how to add, subtract, and multiply and divide. But I would rather do whole numbers. Subtract 2. 3x equals 18, divide by 3, x equals 6. Pretty simple, huh? Okay, now let's look at fractions. We can do the same thing. What do we get fractions? Let's look at this equation. 4.5 x minus 3/5 equals negative 1 1/4. You cannot drop any of your negatives, so please be careful. So again, if we multiply every term by the same thing, we're not changing anything. So let's look at our denominators. What common denominator is for 2, 5, and 4? It's 20, right? If you got a common denominator. Well, let's multiply the whole thing by 20 and see what we get. So we get 20 times, we have to change this to an improper fraction, which is 9/2 x minus 20 times 3/5 equals, I'm going to change that to an improper fraction. You don't have to, but it just makes it easier, times 20. Okay? So remember, I have to multiply every term. I have 3 terms in this equation, every term. So what do I have here? This becomes 1, this becomes 10. So what's 10 times 9? That's 90x. This becomes 1, this becomes 4, that's 12. This becomes 1, this becomes 5, this becomes a negative 25. Wow! Then I can just solve for x. I have whole numbers now. Isn't that much easier than trying to work with fractions? You can work with fractions if you like them. I don't personally like them. I'd rather work with whole numbers. But that will work too. Well, then you solve for x. You divide by 90. Okay? You get x equals negative 13/90. And you can't simplify. That's simply your answer. Okay, so let's look at example 24.2. Same thing, but you can't forget your rules and your properties. It says every term, when you have parentheses, means everything inside that is multiplied. You can't drop parentheses, drop negatives, because that's when confusion kicks in. 4x plus 2/5 minus 3/2 equals 1/3. I'm going to put this in parentheses so you know that this is bound together because of that division bar. Just so you can see that, and you don't forget that, and I would suggest you do that. So what's my common denominator between these three numbers? It's 30. So I'm going to multiply this whole thing by 30. So I'm going to get 30 times 4x plus 2 over 5 minus 3 halves times 30 equals 1/3 times 30. I'll make it 30 to make it easier. Well, this cancels to what? 10. This cancels to 15. This cancels to 6. So you have 6 times 4x plus 2. Remember, these are all protected inside this parentheses. Minus 45 equals 10. Well, I've got to now I have to solve. My first thing I have to do is I have to distribute. So this has to be distributed to every term in here. So it's 24x plus 12 minus 45 equals 10. Well, what's 12 and 45? They're all different signs. You find the difference. So you have 24x minus 33 equals 10. Yes. So you're going to add 33 to both sides. You get 24x equals 43. Can you see that? Okay. So now I simply divide by 24. X equals 43 over 24. And you can change that to improper fraction as a mixed number, or you can leave it there. So that's all you're doing. Let's look at example 24.3. So you look at the denominators and you just get a common denominator. What is the least common denominator? You multiply every term. Then you get rid of your fraction. So you have 3x over 2 plus 8 minus 4x over 7 equals 3. I have a common denominator of 1, 7, and 2. What's my common denominator? 14. So I multiply 14 by everything. So it's 14 times 3x over 2 plus 14 times 8 minus 4x. Remember, this is going to be protected by the parentheses. 3 times 14. This becomes 1 and 2. 1 and 7. This becomes 21x. Plus, you're going to distribute this 2 because that's what's left. Right? 16 minus 8x equals 42. Then you combine like terms. So I have like terms? Yeah. 21 and negative 8 are different signs. You find the difference. So you get 13x plus 16 equals 42. You minus 16 from both sides. You get 13x equals 26. You divide by 13 on both sides. You get x equals 2. Right? Alright, moving on. Let's move on to overlapping triangles. We already learned some rules and we said triangles that are similar have the same shape but not necessarily the same size, and their angles are the same. So let's look at this one. Okay? So we can say this figure, angle A is in triangle BAC, and angle A is also in triangle ADE. So let's break them up. For example, 24.B. So we've got okay, these two. What do these tick marks mean? That means they're equal. Okay? So what does that mean? That means if this is this an equal and this is this an equal, that means what? These three are equal. And it means that their sides are what? Also, corresponding sides are also not equal, but they're proportions. Right? So let's take an example of 24.4. They want you to find x and y. So they give you some information. They said this is 4, this is 7, 9, y, x, and 6. The first thing we're going to do is we want to separate the two triangles. Yes? So we know from here to here is 4, and from here to here is 6. And the big triangle, this is going to be 10. This is 7 plus x, right? This plus that. This is simply y. This is 9. This is 4. This is 7. So we know we have the proportions. As we said, these two are going to be equal. These are going to be equal. Therefore, these three have to be equal. Right? This one has to be equal. Yes? So the opposite sides, 10 to 4, and this one is 7 plus x to 7, and then you have y to 9. You see that? So now they want you to find x and y. We can figure out what the scale factor is for one, or we can use equal to any two ratios. So I can do, this is 10y and 4 9. So can I do 10 over y is equal to 4 to 9? Well, then I cross multiply and I get 90 equals 4y, and divide by 4, y equals 45 over 2. I'll leave it in proper. I might just simplify. So y is going to equal to 45 over 2. Can I find x? Yeah, I can do the same thing. I can take this. 7 plus x over 7 is equal to 4. Oops. Actually, I did this wrong. This should have said 10 over 4 to y over 9, which I get the same thing. Okay, because this is my 4 and that's my y. So I get 7 plus x over 7 is equal to 10 over 4. And I do cross multiplication. Now remember, this is protected. 4 times 7 plus x equals 7 times 10, which is 70. You see that? Now we simply are going to solve. I'm going to distribute them, do it up here. So I've got 28 plus 4x equals 70. I solve for x, and I get 4x equals 42. Divide by 4, x equals 21 over 2. And there's simply your x. Now, we could have done the scale factor, right? Said 4 times what equals 10? 4 times the scale factor equals 10. We divide by 4, and my scale factor is 5 halves. Yes? And I simply can do that for each one. 7 or times 5 halves equals to 7 plus 6, and then solve for x. And I could do the same thing down here. 9 times 5 halves equals y, or 45 over 2 equals y. That's what I got. Alright, so there's two ways. You can use scale factors, or you can use proportions. Alright, so the code for this lesson is write the number 300 on homework lesson 22. The code is number 300, just write 300, on the top of your paper on lesson 22. Okay, do the practice problems, and we will see you in class.